Well, welcome folks to the 2020-23. I said that too many times. It's just 2023. 2023 Profit Power Hour. We're here talking about optimizing revenue per unit aggressiveness and how to understand and improve your pricing effectiveness. It's season 2 of the Profit Power Hour, and we're so glad that you're joining us live on today's episode number 3. We've got a ton of great content, and we're excited to have everybody joining today to talk about something that I believe can have tremendous impact on your business today. So if you're tuning in, tell us where you're tuning in from live today, and you guys can jump into chat and make sure that you've got chat with everyone selected, and tell us where you're tuning in from. We've got College Station, Texas, Jay Maxwell, Portland, Oregon. I'm here in Denver, Cape Girardeau, Missouri, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Oh, and one other thing. I like my new pattern on these Profit Power Hours. We're talking about profit. We also need to talk about gratitude. So what's one thing you're grateful for today? I got one thing I'm grateful for. Just before we started this webinar, my daughter came banging on my office door. I work from home, and she's 2 and she wants to see dad, and she's banging away. So literally, that's why we started 1 minute late. I had to call in the reinforcements there. But anyways, I'm thankful for my kids, and thankful for all of you joining in. Thankful for the fantastic panelists that we have joining us today. Denny Miller, broker owner at Zenith Properties in Northwest. Denny, I really appreciate you and have enjoyed our friendship over the years. So thanks for being a great entrepreneur and friend. Matt Leshper. Matt, I remember eating ceviche at the pool in Puerto Vallarta back in 2017. That was when we first got to know each other, and it's been a fun run since. So thanks for being on today. And folks, we pick panelists on purpose. These 2 gentlemen are some of the industry's top performers when it comes to driving pricing. And I know, since I've looked at the numbers. And then there's, let me go the other direction. Then there's me. And I am the author of the NARPM Accounting Standards, CEO at Profit Coach. And also, one of the things that we love doing at Profit Coach is helping property managers expand their entrepreneurial freedom by building highly profitable, self-managing companies. More than that, I'm grateful to be a husband to a phenomenal wife, Megan, and dad to 3 of the cutest kids in the world. All right. If you have questions today, dump them in the Q&A box. You're welcome to use chat and light up the chat, and make sure that we have some good side conversation. If you don't agree with anything I'm saying, you can keep that to yourself. If you don't agree with Denny or Matt, you can put that in chat. No, just kidding. So we can have some good conversation on the side. And thankful for everybody's gratitudes in chat already. Spring weather and family seem to be big gratitudes today. All right. But yes, if you have questions throughout the webinar, put those in the Q&A box so that we can be sure and track those and make sure that we get to those throughout the session. We're talking about optimizing RPU aggressiveness. Now, what is RPU aggressiveness? Why does it matter to you? And how do you understand and improve your pricing effectiveness? We're digging into all of that. But RPU aggressiveness is important because it's one of the new measures of the NARPM accounting standards. And we'll dig into that in just a moment, but it's not all about just being aggressive. It's just about understanding how you stack up to your peers in the industry. But what we want to do in this webinar is go way deeper than just numbers and surface level discussion on what's the next fee you can charge. That's important, that's valuable, but we want to facilitate a transformation of thinking to help you move from financial fog to financial clarity, and ultimately from mediocrity to benchmark success. And that's the goal of this entire series. So I hope you're ready. I hope perhaps you're ready to have some of your boxes around pricing shifted a little bit and engage this from a new perspective. Well, we're coming off the 2022 NARPM Financial Benchmark Study. You all have heard about this already. And we've discussed since the release of this in October that we have observed a major shift that has occurred in property management financial performance. And I want to set the stage here and take literally 20 seconds to review, because it really helps give us context for why we're talking about what we're talking about today, and that's specifically pricing. We've talked about the 6 games that drive financial performance: the game of profit, labor, pricing, growth, experience, and expense management. And specifically, we start with the game of profit, and we've acknowledged that there's been a significant profitability shift over the years. We've gone from 6% average in 2017 to 11% average profitability in 2021. Huge shift on the average, but also a really significant shift on the top 25% of performers, who have gone from 25% profitability in 2017 up to 32% profitability in 2021. But of course, the question is how and why. What happened and how did it occur? In our last session of the Profit Power, we talked about the game of labor, and I truly believe that labor efficiency is the most significant way to measure and drive profitability in your organization. It's what I call the desert island metric. But if you dig a level deeper, the next question is, what are the keys to driving direct labor efficiency? What are the key levers for improving direct labor efficiency? I've got a question coming in from TJ here, so I'll just answer this live. What does profitability mean to the benchmark study? What is or is not included? And we're specifically talking about property management profitability. So it would be your property management operations minus in-house maintenance or in-house brokerage operations. So that's what we're talking about here. But what are the key levers for improving direct labor efficiency? We talk about the 3 Ps of DLER: pricing, productivity, and pay. And today we're talking about pricing. So if we start with a big picture, how do you drive profitability? The next level is you got to drive labor efficiency. And the next question is, what is the most dynamic way to drive labor efficiency? And I truly believe that the most dynamic lever for driving profit in any business is, you guessed it, pricing, what we're talking about today. So we're going to pause there, and I'm going to bring in the panelists, Denny and Matt. Thank you for joining. Before we dive into the numbers, I just want to open it up to you guys, and I'll start with you, Matt. Tell us a little bit about your journey with pricing. People like to hear about mistakes and successes. What have been some of the biggest mistakes along the way, some of the successes for you?
I'll say the mistakes have been an opportunity to learn. We have tested a lot of things over the years that didn't work. When I saw the Fed printing money, I immediately thought inflation is going to take root. Let's test pricing changes. And the marketplace said, what are you talking about? You're charging too much. But we tested it. We've come back this year and tested very similar changes, and people are going, yeah, where do I sign? They don't even question. I mean, we're tracking like of attrition. Why are people leaving? Having conversations with them. You're welcome to leave, but can we better understand what we can improve upon? One person so far this year has left due to pricing, and they went to ironically, a competitor, the only one we secret shopped in Austin that's more expensive. So we sent them an email and went, hey, look, if you hate us, that's groovy, but I'm not sure that was the valid reason to change. So I started out like everybody else, and well, maybe not like everybody, but I started with no units. I started with 1, 2, 3 properties and just built this from nowhere. And so from that, I was of the mindset that I had to gain some sort of scale to put food on the family for my table. And if I couldn't pay for the software and pay for this, well, I was already in trouble. But I never started with a high price point because I was scared. I had to get business. I had to prove myself. So the journey for us at 1836 has really been learning the marketplace, learning about ourselves, learning about what the clients want, learning about the psychology of the marketplace and what people look for when they shop. So I'm honestly kind of surprised to be here. I know Denny kills it when it comes to this topic, and I've got a lot of respect for him, but I never thought that I would be on this. We're just shopping and trying to learn and test things. And here's where we ended up.
You know, Matt, but that's because you're a tweaker. And that's one of the big things that we have seen over the years is there's people that sort of view pricing as like this, you know, one and done thing, and they make a massive change and then they don't come back to it for 2 years. But I think one of the things that we've seen and what you just articulated is the importance of continual improvement and incremental progress. And learning in the area of pricing. So I love that. You mentioned two things: secret shopping. Karen, real quickly, is asking, who did you use to secret shop? Did you do it yourself? How'd you do that?
We have done it internally, and we've used external people. Virtually Incredible does even a free one. If
Yeah.
you're, I don't know, a client of theirs, or once a year or something to just get to know them. But you can even just have your staff call around and just ask the 20 questions. People send you a copy of their PMA, and you just put it on a grid.
You also mentioned psychology of the owners, and I just was curious, like, any major observations or lessons in terms of psychology? That's a big question.
This has been the most fascinating topic that I keep coming back to. I read about all these different aspects of business, and really all they are is psychology applied to a different aspect of business. And then I overlay with that, well, if I was a Fortune 500, what would that look like? And you don't go to United Airlines and complain about the pricing. You say, I either do or don't want to buy. Well, how do you shop by? Well, you shop by ease. You know, I don't want to change planes, and you shop by what they show you. Then you get to the airport and you figure out it's a whole other story. But you don't shop by that. So I think all these are valid parts of the discussion. We certainly don't want to bait and switch or ever lie or anything else. But we need to find out what people are triggered on mentally and emotionally. I would love to have, you know, frontal lobe discussions with people on a spreadsheet, but that is not how the American consumer shops.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless of what I want, I have to give them what they're looking for, or we're not going to do business.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly a big part of that tweaking and that desire to match the psychology of the buyer, which has led you to your pricing structure today, and specifically, you know, flat fee, tiered structure. So we'll have the whole flat fee, tiered versus percentage debate in just a moment coming up, ladies and gentlemen, because we've got Denny Miller, a heavy hitter in the pricing world himself, on the other side of that equation, but that'll come up in just a moment. So Denny, go ahead and unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey. Denny fitting us in from the airport, so I appreciate that, Denny. Some big successes and failures along the way.
Well, you know, it really starts, from my perspective, with kind of a mindset. And my background prior to getting involved in property management was in sales, and specifically in the automotive industry. And, you know, the automotive industry just really doesn't make much money when they sell you a car. But when they sell you the warranty and the undercoat and the alarm system and all that kind of stuff. So I had a really clear understanding coming into it that really the only way that we were likely to be profitable and to achieve the financial goals that we had was to embrace whatever value adds that we, you know, could. So really, I think the pricing equation comes down to mindset. First of all, you need to be confident in the fact that you're delivering value. And I would echo what Matt said. You know, a lot of it is really the psychology and the messaging that you have with your clients. And the way I've always cast our conversations with our prospective owners is that, you know, a really good property manager isn't an expense. A really good property manager makes you. We always started with our value propositions, which were really threefold. One is, we're going to make you more money. Two, we're going to give you your life. We're going to make this completely hassle-free. And three, we're going to mitigate risk. We're going to make it, you know, owning rental property as risk-free. Understand is that not everybody makes decisions based on the same set of criteria. And do we want clients who strictly make their decision based on pricing? Okay, well, maybe not. I mean, do you want to be Walmart or do you want to be Nordstrom? And that's really kind of how we've characterized ourselves, is that really we want to be Nordstrom. And of course, you have to have your marketing and your office and your presentation and the way your people talk to clients reflect that kind of high service, high value kind of proposition, where pricing really isn't the main decision maker. Most of our clients really just want to have their life. They want to own rentals without having a hassle. And the other
That was really good. Looks like we lost Denny. Okay. So, but Matt, while Denny's coming back here, I did want to kind of follow up on this. And Denny was really
there's everything from going on. But if you're a really well-run company, there's a lot of value to mitigating the risks. I mean, the most expensive kind of a situation is a non-performing rental where, you know, it's vacant or it's got a non-performing tenant in it, which is even worse. So really, I think it's a mindset kind of thing, and that's what we started with in the beginning. And believe me, we were hungry because we got laid low by what happened in 2008. We were flipping houses, and it didn't really turn out very well for us. And so we were not that excited about managing somebody's rental for 100 or 150 bucks a month. That didn't seem that exciting to us. What seemed exciting was creating a business where we could add value, help people out with their rental properties, and have it be a win-win situation. I mean, if the way I always like to cast it with our clients and also with our team is that our job is to create value. And the bigger value pie that you can create, as long as you're in some kind of a partnership relationship with your owner client, you're going to get a slice of that. So make it as big as possible, and you get to keep some. And that's really been our mental approach to the whole game.
Awesome. That was great. Fantastic. There's a lot of conversation in this industry about fee maxing. And I've always preferred the term value maxing and value maximization. And I think that there's a couple of things that maybe get glossed over in that conversation. And one of them is the thing that you just said, which is it starts with your own perception of your own value. And that is huge. You got to maximize your own perception of your value, then maximize your communication of that value. And then the clients start to perceive it. I think some people think we do a good job and that's value. Unfortunately, if your clients don't know what you're perception. So value maximization, your perception, your communication, their perception. Awesome. Okay, we're going to dive into some numbers here, and we are going to throw up a little bit of a poll, and I want to just get some feedback from the audience here, specifically on this question. How frequently are you currently reviewing your pricing and implementing changes? So go ahead and take a look at this poll. How frequently are you currently reviewing pricing and implementing changes? Monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, every few years as I feel the need? Monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually, every few years as I feel the need. This will be some great fodder for discussion here in just a moment. We talk about pricing primarily in terms of one key number, revenue per unit. And the beautiful thing about the benchmark study, the RPU accounting standards, is that we can look across any number of businesses, various sizes, and compare notes on things like pricing by looking at them on a unit level. Okay, so it's not so much about how much your total revenue is today, it's about what your revenue per unit is. In 2018, the average was 171. Today, the average is 222. The benchmark in 2018 was 238. Again, the average revenue per unit of the top 25% of companies with the highest revenue per unit. And today, it's 317. If you want to see what those numbers look like over time, it's pretty fantastic. 2017, 2019, 2020, 2021, you can see the top 25% and the average here. And those are some really, really significant changes. And so the question is, the reality is things are changing. Pricing is moving quite quickly in this industry. Are you keeping up? Well, here's the feedback on the poll. I'm going to share these results. We have most everybody at annually in terms of the greatest percentage. The next one would be as I feel the need. The next one after that is every few years. Then we go down to semi-annually, monthly, and the least frequent is quarterly. So some really interesting data there that ties back to something I'll show you in just a few moments. But why does it matter? Why is revenue per unit important? Well, I've always said it's one of the top drivers of profitability after labor efficiency. I would actually put pricing as the most dynamic lever, the thing that can make changes the fastest in your business. A 10% increase in revenue per unit can easily produce a 100% increase in profitability. And that is why it's so dynamic. Let me show you some numbers on this. In the benchmark study that we did last year, we took a look at where increases in total net profit come from. In other words, companies that showed a significant shift in bottom line property management net profit year over year, where did it come from? And essentially, what we identified was that growth in terms of new unit count was a far less significant driver of profit than improvement in profit per unit, okay? And so for these companies, if they had a total, if the total profit increase is 100%, 80% of that roughly was coming from a profit per unit improvement, and only about 15 or 16% was coming from growth in new units. So massive change is possible in bottom line profit by improving your profit per unit. And that is honestly easiest to impact through increasing your revenue per unit. Here's the point. Pricing is growth. And what I want you to think about is a mindset shift around the priority of pricing in your business. There are three pricing levers and three growth levers in any business. Most of us, when we think of growth, we think of door growth in terms of acquiring new units. But there's two other actually more important growth levers: retention, and even more important, pricing. And I'm going to show you the data on this right now. Price Intelligently is a software-focused pricing research company, and they do a lot of different things in terms of pricing maximization. But they surveyed a number of companies from, or a very huge number of companies from a number of different industries, not property management specifically, but they were subscription-based companies, not just software, but other companies in industries like media or e-commerce. So they were subscription-based companies, which is analogous to what we do here in property management. And they basically said, we want to understand the impact of these three levers: acquisitions, monetization, and retention. And they said, okay, if we want to drive more revenue, what's the best way to do that? And they discovered that if they had a 1% increase in their acquisition strategy, in other words, that they could actually drive 1% more leads through acquisitions, that would result in somewhere around a 2 to 3% increase in revenue. If they could improve their retention, which would be lowering churn in our case by 1%, that would result in a 6 to 9% increase in revenue. But look at this. If they did a 1% improvement in their pricing structure, that resulted in a 12 to 16% increase in revenue. The point here is pricing is growth. Oftentimes, as owners, we think about growth as getting more leads, more doors in the door. There's a much bigger picture, and actually acquisitions is not the most important growth lever. It's actually pricing. So pricing is growth. And what we're going to focus on today is how to think about that from a process perspective: 3 steps to 3x pricing profit, and how to drive growth and profit through pricing. All right, so here we go. Number 1, clarify the opportunity. And this is where the data from the new benchmarking study is really, really helpful. Because like Denny and Matt have both said, we need a little bit of a mindset shift in order to understand what's possible. Well, in order to understand that, you have to obviously understand that relative to your market. And we look at that in terms of average rent. The reality is, as this chart shows, that revenue per unit is very much correlated to average rent. As average rent goes up, which is the blue dots, so does revenue per unit. And so we have to look at revenue per unit in terms of what's possible relative to your average rent. And that's where we get this new revenue per unit aggressiveness measure. Essentially, this measures revenue per unit as a percentage of average rent We've talked about this before, so I won't spend a ton of time on it. But basic concept is, what is your revenue per unit as a percent of average rent? And then you need to look at that segmented by average rent brackets. So as we look at this, you can just basically look at where you fall in this chart by starting on the left side. What's your average rent? That's the bracket. That's the row that you want to focus on. And the next question is, which column do you fall in? These companies over here in the 100% column have the greatest revenue per unit relative to their average rent. They're the most aggressive in terms of revenue per unit as a percent of average rent. So the vast majority of companies are going to fall right in here. And what you see is that most aggressive companies are getting up to 19% of revenue per unit in terms of a percent of total average rent. So let's just illustrate this a little bit. Denny, do you mind if I put you on the spot in terms of your revenue per unit? Are you okay with that?
Go ahead. Let the cat out of the bag, Danny.
Okay. So Denny, I haven't looked at it today, but I think your revenue per unit is right around 350, 360. Is that right?
You're light. It's over 400.
It's over 400. Okay. So I got that wrong. And what's your average rent today?
About 2,300.
Okay, so we're just going to run the revenue per unit aggressiveness math right here in front of your eyes. So let's go 400 divided into 2,300. And that basically says that Denny's revenue per unit aggressiveness is right around 17, 18%. And so what you can see here is Denny would fall in this bracket right here. And
no, you don't have my column. It's 125%. That's where my column
is. No, you're in the top 25% of performers. That's this column right here. Okay. But basically you can see that while these numbers definitely represent the top performers, it's possible to exceed. Denny's correct. He's all the way in this column over here at 17%. Okay. So the point here is this gives you a framework for what's possible, but it's not a limitation. And a lot of this is defined by your mindset and what you actually believe, how big your pie of value can actually be in what you believe. So that's how this chart works. The summary is rule of thumb. You want your average revenue per unit to be somewhere between 10 to 14% of your average rent. If your rents are over 2,000 or above, Denny's at 17 there. So just giving you some general parameters, or 15 to 19% of average rent if your average rents are 1,000 to 2,000, or 19 to 24% of average rents if your average rents are under 1,000. All right. So before we go on any further, Matt, just if you're a property manager, a property management entrepreneur listening to this today, and you really haven't thought much about dialing in pricing and pushing your pricing, you've been thinking about this number for quite a while. In fact, I think you were maybe the one that asked me about this. Can you give me a number that is measuring revenue per unit as a percent of average rent? Why is this important to you?
It was important to us at 1836 because we have flat fee pricing. And so for a lot of people out there that have percentage plans, you know, they go, well, I just set it and forget it. It's on autopilot, right? I mean, this is great. I don't have to argue with my clients. It's always what it is. And as rents go up, well, my income goes up. And in some ways they're right. That's absolutely right that happens. For us at a flat fee, we went, you know, crap, we're behind the 8 ball with inflation, and we've got to figure out how to deal with this annually to make sure that we stay up. And so once I asked and you plotted for us where our revenue per unit versus our rental rates were, it was up and then it dipped below the line, and it was really visually apparent what was happening. And so at that point, it was just a matter of how do we get back to where we need to be. But honestly, one of our things is to be real with our clients and be transparent. And it was really easy to clip the sides for numbers, but copy and paste that chart and go, here's the reason your rates are going up. Because we've been going down compared to everybody else over the last year, 18 months. So we have to get back to at least par. So we're not trying to make a killing, but do you want us to stay in business? And it's a hard argument when somebody gives you kind of figures on the other side. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah. And so this really helps you position, helps you stay clear, not just on a one-time basis, but on an ongoing basis in terms of where you are. Got to got to keep this going, this measurement going. And I would say, Matt, did you have another thing on that?
No, just monthly. It's
Yeah.
always have to be watched. I mean, set it and forget it. It's scary.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we're going to talk about that more in just a second. All right. Some of you have asked, well, what about multifamily? We do a lot of multifamily, or at least a significant portion of our units are multifamily. And so is that different than single family? The answer is yes. And if you have access to the entire NARPA membership portal, you have access to the final benchmark guide from the 2022 NARPA benchmark study, where we released these multifamily revenue per unit aggressiveness measures. And so similar concept, but here are the numbers for multifamily, and you can see the top targets in terms of revenue per unit aggressiveness for the multifamily rent brackets. So I won't spend any more time on that, but essentially you can get this data and digest it a little bit more by getting the full benchmark study from your NARPA membership. And these are essentially the NARPA multifamily revenue per unit rules of thumb. So if your average rents are 1,500 or over 1,500, you're targeting 7 to 8. If your average rents are between 1,000 and 1,500, 10 to 13% of average rent. And if your average rents are under 1,000, 11 to 16% of average rent on multifamily units. Okay, so that's number one, clarify the opportunity. You got to get perspective on what the opportunity is. And then secondly, define your target and pathway. Now, before we go any further, one of the things that we have as a result of the NARPA benchmark study is some great data on where money comes from and where the pricing structures are that drive the most revenue. And we're going to get into that in just a moment. But we want to help equip property managers like you to actually have the implementation knowledge you need to know what are the fees that are driving the most revenue, what are people charging, how are they rolling those out, are they mandatory, are they optional, do they roll them out with new lease or just upon renewal, or lease and renewal, how are people implementing, what are the kinds of third-party services that they're using to implement these. If you're on the call today and you think any of that information would be useful, raise your hand virtually right now. We are thrilled to be announcing the release of our 2023 Profit Coach National Pricing Report to help you answer all of these questions. And by the way, a bunch of you just raised your hands virtually, so thank you. And essentially what we want to do is answer all of those tactical implementation questions. And we're going to crowdsource the data, anonymize it, roll it together, and provide a national pricing report that will be only available for free to people who participate, okay? So you got to contribute the insight if you want the insight. And here's how it works. We're going to be launching this today, right now. You can go to pmprofitcoach.com/pricing report. And I'm going to go ahead and pop this in the chat, pmprofitcoach.com/pricing report. Okay, you can go there and jump into the survey right now. And essentially, here's what we're going to do. You're going to get a survey that's going to ask you essentially, hey, what are the fees that you're charging? Not all of them. We kind of know which ones drive the most revenue, and those are the ones we want to know about. But here's an example of the kind of information that will be provided as a result of this survey. So, for example, one of the things that Denny has pioneered to a significant degree in this industry is a pet fee, a monthly pet fee. And, we're talking about getting data like, all right, what is your current implementation? How many what percent of your units do you charge this fee to? All right, what's your target implementation? How is the amount of the pet fee calculated? Is it a flat dollar amount, or is it a percent, or how is it calculated? Is the fee mandatory or optional? How did you roll it out, upon new lease or upon renewal, or both? How did tenants respond during implementation? They push back a little bit, but not too much. Do you use third parties? Yes, we use petscreening.com. What's the average third party cost associated with this? And then how did you promote this to your tenants? So those are the kinds of questions that we're going to ask, and then aggregate that data and provide that feedback across a wide variety of fees and clients across the industry. It looks like this link isn't totally working, so I'll fix that in just a second. But Denny, since we're talking about pet fees, like I just want to give people a flavor for the kind of insight that you're going to be able to provide to people. And so my question for you is just talk a little bit about your journey with this, some of your lessons learned. This is one of the biggest opportunities that people can take advantage of. How has this evolved over time for you? I just want to get a flavor for the kind of insight that we can share in this community-driven approach here.
So in the very beginning, we had a provision in our management agreement that said that we kept third-party fees. And of course, these were tenant paid fees, they were vendor fees, they were any number of fees, and it was in there. And in the beginning, I think we charged an administrative fee, an administrative pet fee if somebody had a pet, because we did a pet interview, which the value proposition to our owner was, we're not going to let in a dog or a cat or a pet that isn't, meet our standards, and here's what our standards are. And it was just a one-time at the time of the signing of the lease. And then our good friend, John Bradford, started petscreening.com, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is a great opportunity. And I was actually at a NARPM leadership meeting in Kansas City, and I heard somebody else talking about charging a monthly pet fee. And I thought to myself, this is a great idea. And when we started it out, we charged, I think it was maybe $25 or $30 a month. If it was a 5-paw, it was maybe $10 more if it was a 4-paw, maybe $10 more if it was a 3-paw. And what we learned is that people love our pets. And I'm just going to give you a really good personal example. We have a dear Westie that has been a family member for 15 years. And last month, my wife and I went to Thailand, and he's kind of on his last leg. And we probably spend, I don't know, $300 to $500 a month on his medications and his pet visits. And we probably spent close to, I don't know, $7,500 a day to have somebody watch him in our home. And so, I mean, really, people are willing to spend a lot of money on their pets. So our current scale now is $80, $90, and $100 per month per pet. And think about it, we're managing single family houses, okay? And we convince our owners that, if you want to rent your property quickly, you need to allow pets. And I would say that probably 97 to 98 or 99% of all of our owners allow us to put in pets. They all know that we keep the fees. All right, it's right there. And yes, we do. And, we do give them some value add. Because first of all, the property is going to rent quicker. Second of all, we actually will pay up to $1,000 of damage if the tenant's security deposit doesn't cover pet damage as a result of allowing a pet. And let me tell you something, this has been a massive game changer for us. And do tenants cheat? Yes, they do. But guess what? We do inspections, and our lease says that if they cheat, there is a $500 pet non-compliance fee. Plus, we're going to assume that the pet was there at the inception of the lease because they lied to us, and they also owe us monthly pet fees going back to the first day they signed the lease. And we've had a couple of situations where we busted tenants, and it's like $3,000 to $5,000. Now, collecting it is another different matter. Sometimes we'll negotiate it. But let me tell you something. We love pets. We love pets. We're pet lovers in our company, and it helps our owners rent their properties quicker. It doesn't cause damage, and residents want to have pets. They love their pets. They're willing to spend a lot of money on pets. And so why shouldn't we participate? I don't know if any of you have gone to a hotel with your pet, but they're going to charge you like $50, $7,500 a night. So wake up. There's a profit opportunity here.
That's a great summary. Thanks, Denny. And I love how you've evolved with this over time. You took something you heard from someone else and ran with it. And I don't know of anybody that implements it quite like you do. So fantastic. That's the kind of insight that we're looking to aggregate together with this pricing report. So jump into that and contribute and benefit from this aggregated research. All right. We're going to talk a little bit about a couple of things, and one in terms of clarifying the pathway. That was step 2. Number 1, understand what your opportunity is. Step 2, clarify the pathway. And one of the reasons that what Matt said is so important, that you can't just let average rents and your percent-based management fee take care of your pricing increases, is because, well, you shouldn't be getting even, the vast majority of your revenue from your management fee necessarily. There's no really right or wrong way to get that revenue. But at the end of the day, what we're seeing in the data is that top performing companies, people in this column here who have the highest revenue per unit, are only getting about 55% of revenue from their management fee. 45% is coming from ancillary opportunities like what Denny is talking about. We understand that, we know that, but that's the data on why keeping this conversation before you on a monthly or quarterly basis is so important. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about pricing structure. And this is going to be kind of fun, because I remember that we had a very similar conversation literally about 18 months ago, kind of in the wake of, I think it was, we were seeing a lot of inflation post-COVID, and Denny and Matt were both on the webinar, and they weren't being mean to each other, but the discussion was percent-based, flat fee, tiered, what's better? And I remember, Matt, you were kind of like tail between the legs a little bit, like, you know what, I think maybe, the jury's out that, or the verdict's in that, it's just really hard to keep in touch with inflation with a flat fee method. Well, we've done the research, and folks, here's what we found. There's actually not a tremendous difference between flat fee and percentage in terms of overall pricing, but by far the winner overall in terms of both revenue per unit and revenue per unit aggressiveness is a flat fee tiered program. Second runner up is percentage fee tiered, then percentage not tiered, and then the last one is flat fee not tiered. So there's 2 different things going on here. One is flat fee versus percentage, then tiered, not tiered. And what we actually see as being perhaps the most significant driver here in terms of higher revenue per units is a tiered approach. Now, you could say, well, is it causation or correlation? Honestly, this is correlation, but it's worth noting people with the highest revenue per unit. It's worth noting what people with the highest revenue per unit are doing. So Matt, I'm going to give you the floor. Why are you doing flat fee tiered, and why is that working for you?
So I will first say that I love the devil's advocates that are out there. So I by no means think I'm right, nor do I want to be, because I think the conflicting points of view make us all better. So I don't want to preach, because I've learned from probably every one of our 98 participants right now at some point in this game. What I look to is the psychology of the buyer more than anything else. Originally, I was the BDM, right? We've all played all these roles. We've taken the trash out, we've painted the house, we've done it all, right? When I was the BDU, I would try to have mathematical discussions with people, and they glazed and bolted as quick as I could open that conversation. Mm-hmm. When I broke things down into simple boxes that were square, they accepted that information. And so my desire was to talk tangible. Man, I'm going to give you a spreadsheet. I'm going to show you why we're better and how this, I'm going to compare. Gone. They wouldn't even hear it. When I acquiesced to what the consumer wanted, even if I don't like it, they started buying easier. Mm-hmm. Then the tiers came in really because we wanted to find something that fit everyone. Because if you have one flat fee and one pricing, it really doesn't fit the marketplace, because you've got, well, you got properties you don't want, and that's fine, but you've got entry, mid, and then high level properties, and you've got to find a balance for those. So the tiers for us were less about service, because we've just decided you're going to get great service, period. That's it. You're not going to sign up with us and get junk service. but we want to find the best pricing for you. And we'll actually tell these people this plan fits you better mathematically, and here's why. Believe it or not, people push back and go, yeah, but I want a lower leasing fee, so don't do that. Sign me up and I'll pay with the equivalent of $5 more a month. It blows my mind, but they want what they want, and it doesn't necessarily make sense. So you just give them what they want.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for the feedback on that. And, I want to go to a kind of a correlated discussion here. And Denny, I'd be interested in your feedback on this, but one of the other things that we noticed in the study, and I think this is really significant, is the impact of your collection policies, and specifically collecting on non-occupied properties, and also collecting management fees regardless of rent collected. So Matt, where do you fall? I think you, where do you fall on both these policies?
If you want me to work, you want our people in the office, you pay us. This blows my mind that people would go, well, we don't charge you if it's not rented.
Right.
But you're still working, so you still deserve to get paid.
Yeah, and I think this is probably the best data that speaks to this. So this is a lot of different information in terms of policies and pricing structures from the benchmark study. But essentially, pay attention to this column right over here. This column is where the practices of people with the highest revenue per unit. And you can basically see that, some of the significant things, for example, the tiered structure, people with the highest revenue per unit, have 57% of them have a tiered structure. So you can see that that's really weighted strongly here. But then the other thing to note is this collecting on non-occupied properties under management. 33% of people in the top tier, which is higher than any other bracket, collect on non-occupied properties. Denny, what's your take on both of these policies? How do you guys handle this?
Well, we definitely have a minimum monthly management fee. We're going to charge. I mean, the reality is every single person on this call knows that managing a vacant unit involves more work than managing an occupied unit, and you have to be paid for that. So there's a minimum monthly management fee. That's definitely my take on it. I wouldn't consider it otherwise. I mean, sometimes too, your owner will get involved, and because when's a unit vacant? Well, you had an eviction, you had a turnover, you're onboarding a new owner, and the owner has gotten involved, and he's delayed your ability to actually get income coming in on it. And you're doing a lot of work. So yeah, absolutely, 100%. We've always had a minimum monthly management fee.
Yeah. And, I think one of the things we saw, one second, Matt, one of the things we saw in COVID was the fact that, and this kind of goes to Brandon's question in the chat here. And Matt, I'd like your feedback on this question. How do you answer an owner that says, what is the incentive to get it rented if you get paid either way? Well, the reality is COVID taught us that sometimes this is just flat out of your control in terms of collections, right? Sometimes the government will actually go in and say, you don't need to pay rent and you can't force collections. And so in that case, that puts the management company in a real pinch, and they're still doing work managing the unit. So I think that's a good example of why it's important for the management company to have the opportunity at least to collect regardless of rent collected. Matt, you were going to say?
Yeah, I lost it. It's okay.
Okay. All right.
Any feedback? I'd like to chime in on that for a second. So, I mean, everybody should have a leasing fee. So your incentive to get the property leased is the leasing fee. And the other thing is we use a set flat minimum management fee, which should be less than what you're going to get if you got the property rented. So you got plenty of incentive here. And again, from the property manager's perspective, it's less work to manage and occupy.
Yeah, great feedback. Okay, so we're trying to paint a little bit of a picture of the pathway here. And the last slide I'm going to throw up in terms of the pathway is another table from the benchmark study. This is an overwhelming amount of data, but it's a gold mine. And here's what this is saying. We have analyzed at a certain level, and we're going to go to the next level in this pricing report that I just released to you guys, or the survey. But essentially what this does is if you look in the 100% column, these companies right here are the companies that have the highest revenue per unit. And it shows you by percent where their money's coming from. So again, 55% is coming from management fees, 44%, 45% from ancillary fees. You know, how does application fees, leasing fees, renewal fees, owner paid fees and specific owner paid fees, tenant paid fees and specific tenant paid fees, how do these contribute to the overall makeup of revenue per unit for the top performing companies? This is a phenomenal way to get started on the pathway to optimize revenue per unit. Okay, so we're going to address a couple of concerns here, and folks, we're probably going to go maybe 5 minutes over here because we still have a bit of content. But one of the concerns that comes up is, well, how is revenue per unit aggressiveness going to impact growth? And the idea here is if I charge more, then I'm going to be less attractive. My competitors are going to get ahead of me, and it's not going to work out. And truly, there is a point at which you can charge so much that you probably do price out the market if you're not simultaneously improving your value. But here's what the data actually shows. The data actually shows that companies that are most aggressive on pricing actually add the most doors. So the data does not bear out any negative correlation between pricing aggressiveness and new doors. The reality is, it's just, what are you focused on and are you driving results? My interpretation of this is aggressive PMs are just aggressive when it comes to pricing and when it comes to growth, and they make it happen. I'll move on and just get one other data point out there in front of you. The question here being, how does revenue per unit aggressiveness impact churn? If you charge more, are you going to experience more churn? And again, the answer based off of correlating 2021 revenue per unit to 2021 churn is we don't see a correlation. Generally speaking, people are right in the same bracket of churn, regardless of their revenue per unit aggressiveness. Any comments on those two observations there, Matt and Denny?
No, other than if you have more revenue, you can put the money back into your system too to deliver better service. So
Yes,
it's not just about revenue just for profit, but that revenue can deliver better service, which feeds the entire system with a better reputation, better experience, better employees, and that feeds the future, as Jordan's email said today, go long. So it's not about extracting a dollar today as much as building something that outperforms others.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I would echo exactly what Matt said. He's absolutely right. If you've got more revenue to work with, then you've got more resources to deliver a higher level of service. Our churn rate is around 10 to 12%, so it's way lower than the top 100%. You can retain clients and charge a lot, so don't worry about that.
All right. So we're going to talk in just a moment about what I actually think is the most important part of today's presentation, which is the pricing process in your organization. What is the process? How do you operationalize pricing in your business in such a way that you can consistently drive results over time? Before we go there and before we wrap up with that, where do you stand on pricing today? I want to help you answer that question. You can get your copy of the 2022 NARPM Financial Performance Guide. It's now available over at narpm.org/education/NARPM-accounting-standards. And this is the right way to get clear on what the opportunity is and get clear on the pathway for you. Get converted to the NARPM accounting standards, get in the game of financial performance, and see how you stack up to the 2022 benchmarks. Following this presentation, we're also going to help you get clear on some of these metrics by giving you our new metrics calculation tool, where you can plug in your numbers, get clear on things like not only revenue per unit, but revenue per unit aggressiveness as well, and help you understand your structure and how it stacks up to the industry. But for you, as you walk away from this presentation today, what is the fastest way to have impact on your pricing? Do you know the answer to that question? We want to help you get the answer to that question and give you the opportunity to schedule a financial review call with our coaching team to discover how you stack up to the RPU benchmarks, discover what your RPU is as a percentage of average rent, and help you identify your number one opportunity to maximize your revenue per unit. So here's how it works. You'll have to actually send us some information so that we can actually help out with this, and send us your profit and loss statement for the last 12 months. We will go over that, review that ahead of time, and then on the call, we'll help you calculate your revenue per unit compared to the benchmark, help you determine if you should convert to the NARPM accounting standards and what that would look like, and then provide you with next steps you can take to dramatically improve your revenue per unit, typically by at least $50,000 in additional revenue per year. So no strings attached. Happy to help you get that clarity. Thanks for being on the call today. And if that would be helpful to you, just answer the poll here and we'll get that scheduled if that would be helpful for you. Okay, so we're going to close with talking about pricing process. The 3 steps to 3x pricing profit. Number 1, clarify the opportunity. Number 2, define your target and pathway. And number 3, establish a pricing process for incremental progress and implementation in your business. This, to me, I think, is where the money is made. And this is essentially what Matt was talking about at the beginning of the webcast. It's a learning mindset with a monthly review cadence that results in constant, continuous improvement. Now, I'm going to skip that poll and we're just going to go straight to this data. I talked a little bit about Price Intelligently and the analysis that they do across subscription-based businesses in a number of different industries. And here is a very interesting data point. This answers the question as to why you need a pricing process. And basically what they looked at was thousands of business, over 3,000 companies, and their incremental change in revenue per unit. Average revenue per unit is what that stands for right there, over time, looking back 5 years. So if 5 years ago was the baseline, which companies experienced the most significant growth in average revenue per unit? And they segmented based on companies that reviewed their prices every quarter, updated pricing every quarter, every 6 months, yearly, and no change in 3 years. And here's what they found: that pricing changes and pricing improvements directly correlate to the frequency of review. Is that shocking? No, but I have to just show you some data to prove the point. And companies that review on a quarterly basis are the ones that are way ahead. Look at the difference between quarterly review. They experienced an over 100% increase in pricing in 5 years, versus companies that only review every 6 months, versus companies that only review annually, versus companies that really never review. If you really never review, you're not going to experience much change, probably not even to keep up with inflation. The money is made in a quarterly review, at least according to this data. Super profound. Okay, so what is a pricing process? I want to give you this definition. I want you guys to think about this, write it down, talk about it with your leadership team, and see what this can do for you. A pricing process is a quarterly, operationalized team endeavor focused on value maximization. And there's some key things here. Quarterly, it's got to be frequent. Matt says monthly, but at a minimum quarterly. Number 2, it's operationalized. You guys have a checklist for everything in your business. Checklist for move-ins, move-outs, checklist for leasing. Now, Jordan Moyle has been talking about operationalizing sales and marketing. I've never heard anybody talk about operationalizing pricing. Do you have a pricing process in your business? Is this operationalized into your workflows like the other aspects of your business? It's your number 1 growth lever. It's got to be operationalized. Number 3, it's got to be a team endeavor. If you as the owner are the only one thinking about this and you do not have your team on board, you're going to experience the kind of thing that so many people have experienced. That is, I can't get my team on board with this. It's got to be a team endeavor. The team has to believe in the value. The team has to be trained to communicate and sell the value, and ultimately be kept accountable to implementing this. And the whole focus, as has been said, needs to be on value maximization. All right, so what does this look like? I'm going to break it down and we're going to wrap. 2 components of the pricing process. Number 1, quarterly review process. Number 2, an implementation process. What do those look like? The quarterly review process has about 6 components. Number 1, value. What is our value proposition And how can we make it even more compelling for our target personas? That's a conversation to have on a quarterly basis. Number two, what's our RPU budget and target? What's our RPU budget? Meaning, where do we need to be to hit our financial goals? What's just sort of minimum viable product for us to hit our financial goals? And then what is our RPU target? Where could we be relative to our value? If we can make our value this much per the first point, where could our revenue per unit be? Number three, what is our pricing structure? What changes structurally could we make to our pricing structure to better reflect the priorities of our target personas? Matt has talked about this already, the importance of understanding the psychology of your clients and what resonates with them. And perhaps you have three main types of clients. Do you have a structure that can be adapted and tweaked to what resonates with those three main personas individually? Number four, fee additions and changes. Again, a quarterly review process. What pricing changes and additions will better communicate and monetize our value proposition? And finally, messaging and presentation. What's one thing we can do this quarter to improve our messaging and presentation of value to more accurately reflect our full value proposition? All right, we're going to go to the implementation component. That's the quarterly review component, implementation component. Number one, got to have a driver. If it's you as the owner, you're super busy, I doubt how well this is going to go. Can you get someone on your leadership team to drive the implementation of this? And then beyond them, who's the broader team that's going to support this? Property managers, client-facing positions, tenant-facing positions, and how do we get the team on board? How do we train them, report on the progress, and then celebrate success? Thirdly, what's the process component here to implementation? What is the repeatable process for adoption? How do we actually make sure that we get the leases, the renewals signed, the new PMA signed? What's the repeatable process for doing new implementations on an ongoing basis? How do we release, report, and refine the process and the results? And then lastly, what is the repeatable process for operational implementation? Don't forget about accounting. By the way, this is where so much of this goes wrong. People come out with these massive PMAs with 13 new fees. They forgot about the accounting. They forgot about actually billing it. And so much money is lost as a result of not actually getting the revenue reported on and billed and collected. So that's a little bit of an overview of how to think about pricing process. And the whole goal there is to equip you to beat the benchmark in the area of pricing. Matt, Denny, any final comments on anything, maybe even on this process component, the pricing process idea before we wrap?
I'll go first.
Go ahead, Matt. No, Matt.
The only thing I would say is regardless of how you feel about this, you have to have revenue to compete. The money goes back into the system. Don't shortchange your future and yourself and even the service you deliver to your clients. To serve them, you have to charge them. And if you haven't traveled or looked outside in the last year, things are outrageously expensive. So even if you're just keeping up, you're going to have to make some changes quarterly, annually. Either way, don't be scared to try things. We fail. Sometimes things don't work. And then you come back and the same thing works a year later. So just keep trying, but don't fall behind feeling like you don't deserve to be paid. If you have integrity, do a great job, believe in yourself and your team, take care of them, take care of your future, and tell your clients you deserve to be in business because you do a great job.
That's awesome. Denny.
Well said, Matt. So first of all, I'd just like to start by saying you're worthy. Okay, you're all working your butts off. This is not an easy business. You're worth it. And just be bold, be courageous. We've sent out fee change letters multiple different times to our owners, and they are not going to leave you. I mean, maybe 2 or 3% might contact you. Maybe half of 1% might say, you know, if you don't make an adjustment here, I am going to leave, you know, and maybe you do want them to leave. So don't be afraid. Hey, get your team on board. Get your team on board. You get your team on board by educating them about how your business works. Be transparent about the numbers. Cut them in for a piece of the action. Do some kind of a profit share program. You know, be transparent. You'll get your team on board. And one of the very best things that has happened in our company, I mean, there's been a lot of things. Joining NARPM in the beginning, I was involved in Strategic Coach. The two things right now that are driving the success in our business is our association with Profit Coach and running our company on EOS. So turn in those inquiries and get a hold of Danny. You won't regret it.
Hey, thanks, Denny. I really appreciate that. And folks, again, 2 key lessons from the benchmark study: financial performance is community driven. We want to ask you to contribute to this pricing report. I think you'll get a ton of value out of it. And it's also team driven. As Denny said, get your team on board. And so as we wrap up here, don't forget to jump on this URL, pmprofitcoach.com/pricing report. Love to have you contribute to the 2023 National Pricing Report. I think you'll get a ton of value out of that. And till next month, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here, and we hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks, Denny, and thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Danny.